Good morning, everybody. It's about 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, the 19th of May, 2017. And obviously, I'm having a hard time sleeping. I'm up with the racing thoughts thing and just lots of things running through my brain, I guess, today. So I just posted a little bit ago, today's 7 years since Alex and I got engaged. And I just thought it would be a good idea for me to tell that story, because I know that's one of the ones that some people know about but not everybody knows about, and it's actually a really funny story. So we flew back to Michigan in May of 2010. I had left Michigan in September after Alex and I had met each other in person in March, and it was very whirlwind. But anyway, we flew back in March for him to meet my family. And then we were also going to be flying to Southern California at the end of that trip for me to meet his mom, Cindy, and his friend Russell, and the rest of his family, and several of his friends also. So, it was this big meet and greet trip, essentially. And mind you, by this point, nobody had ever met Alex and on my side, and nobody had ever met me on his. So it was supposed to be this initial, this is the first time we're all meeting each other. So we get into Michigan. My niece and my nephew were about 3 and 1 at the time, so there was this very cute thing. Alex took to kids very well. So they were all over him, essentially, as soon as we got there. But part of the reason we had gone back during that time, too, is that my dad, I'm sure most of you know, my dad was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in March of 2010, February, March 2010. He'd been in the hospital for 2 months. So this was actually the first time I was seeing my dad post his extensive stay in the hospital after the cancer diagnosis. He, just had the trach tube. He wasn't doing incredibly well. Part of it was that I wanted Alex to meet my dad, and especially my dad, before my dad passed away. We were pretty sure at that point that, you always keep, when there's a cancer diagnosis, you try to keep positive, but I think in the back of all of our heads, there was this knowledge that it could happen at any time. Now, of course, my dad lived for another 3 years past that, but, I wanted to make sure that my dad got an opportunity to meet Alex. It was really important for me that they got a chance to meet each other just in case something happened to my dad. So we flew out. Now, mind you, Alex, there was no indication whatsoever that he was planning to propose at all. None. Zilch. To the point where, so the day we got engaged, we went and we visited my Aunt Cheryl. And Alex is having this, my aunt is a very good conversationalist and a really great hostess and a really great person. And she's just a really cool person to talk to. It's my Aunt Cheryl. It's my mom's sister. So we went over to meet her. And they're talking, and at some point or another, the conversation turns, and Alex started making these comments about, if Sarah and I are still together and this happens, or if we don't break up at some point and this happens, these kinds of things. And I'm sitting here going, I'm like, oh my God. Now, outside, I'm not doing this. This is all happening in my head. I am freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I thought we were in a better place than this. I can't believe this. This is bullshit. I'm like, I really thought that this was going somewhere. Apparently it's not. So, I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to get dropped on a doorstep 6 months from now. And, and that'll kind of be the end of it. So, I walked out of that meet with my aunt just absolutely devastated, because I told my sisters if he didn't propose while we were on this trip, at some point by the time we got back, I was going to propose to him. That's how committed I was, how serious I was about it. I knew that I wanted to marry him. And that had come up, I guess, sometime shortly before Christmas. Somebody had made a comment about, are you guys going to get engaged? And I just looked at Alex and I'm like, balls in your court. I already know I want to get married, whenever. And he's like, oh, really? That was kind of the end of the conversation. So, of course, what I didn't know is that shortly after that conversation happened, he started planning the entire damn thing out. But he's making these comments to people, and I've got my aunt and my sisters messaging me all the time, just like, I don't know, Sarah, this seems like it's not gonna, it's not gonna work out. Seems like he's not, fully committed to this whole thing. I don't know, that's not a good sign. And And then I started having doubts. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously this isn't as deep as I thought it was. And I think part of that, too, is that Alex tried so hard to cover, both of us did. And going back to when we first got together, both of us had this major wall up when we first got together. I knew how in love with him I was, and obviously, but he knew where we were, but neither one of us acknowledged it to each other. So when I first moved in with him, he essentially said, there's the door. If you feel like leaving, I'm not going to try to stop you. I'm not going to try to fight for you. If you want to leave, it's not going to devastate my life. Just, there it is, and let me know. Essentially, it was a very nonchalant thing. And so there was always kind of this underlying thing for me that I wasn't as important as maybe I had thought I was or hoped I was. I knew how important he was to me, but I don't think that I ever showed it that well originally either. Walls, gotta love it. But anyway, so we get down to this day. We went and we picked up a big pizza dinner for my entire family. My favorite kind of pizza, which is called Anthony's in Michigan, with all the fixins, wings, things like that. And we sat down on the floor with my mom and my sisters and my dad and my niece and my nephew. My now ex-brother-in-law Jesse was somewhere downstairs, but we didn't see too much of him during that trip, thank God. We're sitting there eating pizza and just talking, and all of a sudden, Alex disappeared, and I figured he just had to go upstairs for Tums or something, so I didn't think anything of it. Remember, I had no clue. I am sitting there thinking, we're going to California tomorrow. This is going to be kind of awkward, since now I've got all these really negative thoughts running through my head. I'm thinking, crap, but, I didn't want to meet people and then have it kind of blow up in everybody's face. This is essentially what it came down to. But so he disappeared, and a couple minutes later he came back down, and I'm facing my youngest sister, Holly, and I saw her face kind of just like going all inquisitive for a minute, but it didn't register what was going on at all. Like, I'm just like looking at her, I'm like, whatever, and I went back to talking to my mom. And now, mind you, I can't see Alex. He's sitting slightly behind me, turned away near my dad, and I'm facing my mom and my sisters. And I heard him talk to my dad, and he goes, "Hey, Mike, watch this." And then he turned to me, and "Hey, babe." And so I turned, and I'm like, "What?" Now, I was rude at first because I was mid-sentence with my mom, and he cut us off. "What?" He's just like, "So what did I say to you when I asked you to move in with me?" And I remember looking at him all confused and kind of like, I needed clarification because I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "What did I say when I asked you to move in with me?" And we were on IRC chatting when he just out of the blue goes, "So when are you moving in?" So I went, "So when are you moving in?" And he pulls out this box, and it's a huge ring box. They're about this big from Fred Meyer. Not those tiny little ones you see in the movies where girls go and freak out. But so it's this big box, and he opens it and he just holds it up like this. And he goes, "So when are we getting married?" Now, I don't remember anything for the next 5 minutes. I'm not even kidding. I dropped my soda, I dropped my pizza into my lap, and I'm sitting there mouth agape for 5 minutes, staring at the ring and then looking back up at his face, and then staring at the ring and looking back up at his face, trying to make sense of what he had just said. And then finally things started to click. My engagement ring had been sitting in his suitcase for a month and a half, wrapped in a thing of socks. And he had been planning it since shortly after that conversation near Christmas. A 6-month time span, he's planning on springing this shit on me. All right, so all of the, if we're still together crap and the you can walk out the door whenever you want kind of shit was all part and parcel to this one moment. So all of this crap starts finally clicking in my brain, and I had 5 minutes of just... And one of the things, too, is that he used to play with... I used to have a spinner ring that I wore, and so he would mess with it. When we were, talking or whatever, he'd mess with my spinner ring and, pull my ring off and put it back on, pull my ring off and put it back on and spin it. And what I didn't know what he was doing was he was sizing my ring finger. That was how he figured out what size to get me for my engagement ring. And I had literally no clue. And then it finally, like, I'm sitting there within that last 5 minutes going, oh shit, that's what he was doing. Oh my God. So I looked back up at him and I'm just like, now I guess? Because, I mean, obviously he didn't ask me to marry him. So I just went for the most, like, stupid thing my brain came up with at that moment. He put the ring on my finger, and it's this beautiful sapphire and diamond engagement ring, like little sapphires and diamonds, because he knew I didn't want anything gaudy. So, and he said the sapphires reminded him of my eyes. So, it was gorgeous. I loved it. I remember my dad looked at me and goes, well, did she say yes? I'm just like, yes. I said yes. And they shook hands, and then that was it. We flew to California the next day. Now, mind you, my family is under strict rules that they cannot say a damned word on Facebook or to anyone else yet, because nobody on Alex's side knew that we'd gotten engaged during this trip at all. So we're flying into LAX, and again, I've never met Cindy before. We've talked on the phone, we've talked on Yahoo, but we've never met face to face. So not only is she meeting me for the first time, she's also finding out that I'm marrying her son. And this is less than 24 hours old at this point. And Russell had driven her down to LAX to meet us also. And I mean, Alex was just so abrupt. Instead of being like, hey, guess what happened yesterday? I'm kind of hiding behind Alex because I tend to be a little bit shy when I'm first meeting people, and I'm just like, slightly, like this, and, hi, how are you? How was the flight? And we're giving our platitudes. And all of a sudden, he just grabs my left hand, holds it up like this, and just didn't say a damn word. And Cindy looked at my hand and went, what's that? And he goes, what do you think it is? And that was how he told her we were engaged. And then, I'm meeting Russell for the first time too, and that was a big deal. And it was just like, oh my God, there's like this big thing about it. And of course, less than a year later, and a little over a year later, we were married. But then I got to meet his aunts and his cousins and, and friends down there, and we got to tell everybody while we were down there, and it became this big thing. I didn't realize how much everybody had pretty much figured Alex was never going to get married. Or get into a relationship. I think I was a surprise for a lot of people, Alex included, honestly. And it was just a great day. It was a great time. And then of course it snowballed from there. We got married, and then we moved to Alaska right before we got married. Like literally a month after we got engaged, we got the news that we had to move to Alaska. I'd have followed Alex anywhere, and did. It was the greatest adventure ever. I mean, Alex was the greatest adventure ever. And it's days like today when this stuff gets really tough, it starts to spiral, and it starts to get very tough to handle. And I know that I try to keep a lid on it as much as possible, and I'm sure everybody knows that I get emotional about it, but I try really hard to hide it. Not for any other reason other than to kind of protect everybody from how dark this gets. And today is one of those days. Because it used to be that he and I would talk about this stuff, we'd cycle back to it. So we always our story was always kind of alive, and it was this living thing, and now it's more of a legacy thing. And, Alex was a one-of-a-kind person, and absolutely one of the most beautiful people I'd ever met. He'd have given you the shirt off of his back if you needed it, if he loved you. And I think that's a big caveat. If he didn't care about you, it was like, whatever. But the people that were in his life that he really cared about, I mean, he'd bend over backwards for them. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that for Alex, there was always kind of these walls where he because of all the things that he'd been through in his life, he blocked people as hard as he could. He blocked his emotions as hard as he could. But, underneath that he was wonderful. absolutely wonderful. I mean, he was driven, and he was funny and so intelligent, and he thought about 10 to 12 steps ahead of everybody all the time. And you know, for him that could sometimes be frustrating, and I know for the rest of us it could also be frustrating, but you know, he was loving and caring and thoughtful. And I think a lot of the time people got stuck on the outside wall. I mean, for good reason, that's what it's designed for. But if you really took the time to get to know him, you know, he loved to laugh, and he loved to teach people things. And you know, he was constantly learning and constantly engaging and constantly trying to decipher the world around him in such a way that he could absorb some of the experience, so that he always was relevant, so that there was always a back and forth of information going. He was just so curious about everything. And you know, I don't know that I'd ever met, I know I'd never met anybody like him before. And God strike me down, I know I'm never going to find anybody like him again. I mean, Alex was absolutely a one-of-a-kind person. He had all these different elements that just built up into this 100% absolutely amazing human being. And I don't know. I promised myself I wasn't going to cry, so I'm not going to, and I'm going to end this video here in a minute, but it's just, I miss him so bad. And, you know, this time last year was when he was really starting to get sick, so things are really starting to spiral for me. You know, remembering what was going on this time last year, and then, of course, a month later, he was in the hospital at our wedding, right on our wedding anniversary, our 5-year wedding anniversary, was when he was admitted for that month time span, and things just snowballed. I mean, the entirety of 2016 was a blur. I mean, we started out 2016, 2 weeks into 2016, with an ambulance ride to Northwest with him having the seizures and stuff, and then by August, you know, he was just gone. But I try to remember the good things, and I know that that's one of the things, is to try to focus on the positives. And you know, I was never, if there's one thing in my life I know for sure, it's that I will, what always was and will always be proud that I was his wife, and that he was mine. He is mine. And that's, you know, I'm gonna carry that with me my whole life. All these memories, all these wonderful, even the bad things, are gonna stay with me until I check out, until I peace out myself. So, you know, I think the whole point of this is just, you know, I think we all know how wonderful Alex was if he was in our life, but it's a constant daily thing right now for me. This constant spiraling is just kind of getting out of control. So I just wanted to share some of that with you, some of the good things, because it really was a great life. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys go, but have a good rest of your day. Bye.